So I think about death all the time because it's probably the central theme. It's probably the thing that I think the most about. And I think that influences how I see time and also how I think, how it influences agency. Like what actions I'm willing to take despite the judgment of others. And so a lot of times, and it might be because I have more insecurity than everyone, that I think like, man, I want to do this thing. And then I hear all these other voices of reasons why I shouldn't do it, or why somebody else will say like, that's bad, or you're bad, or like, that's wrong, whatever. And so I think I've had to come up with a lot of these devices to get around my own insecurities, to take action despite those insecurities. And the biggest one that I think about is that it doesn't matter whether I achieve all of my goals or I don't achieve all of the goals. In 3 generations, I'll be forgotten. And the only people who were naysaying against me will also be dead. And so then it's like, just do it for me. And then when I wake up every day, there's only one voice I have to listen to. I think that the more you flex whatever that muscle is of like independent thinking, the more it becomes the default way that you think. And then everyone else's action is just start looking more and more insane to you.
What's an example of that you can think of?
I mean, shoot. Just the most basic ones of like living the life that you don't want, not wearing what you want to wear, not dating who you want to date, not living where you want to live. Like you're living at home and you want to move and your parents say no and you don't make the move, or you're dating a girl because she's socially accepted, by your friend group, she's safe, but like there's always some distance in between you, but you're like, I don't want to risk it, right? Or like you're in the job and every day you go there and you're like, I mean, it's okay. And the idea of just living an okay life just sounds so terrifying to me that the freedom to fail over and over again is still more fulfilling to me. At least it feels like it's real than walking through kind of on autopilot. And so I think that's a lot of the choices that other people make that seem insane to me now, but didn't seem insane to me a decade ago. You know what I mean? I think it's just like, as you practice taking more agency, taking more responsibility for the decisions, then you just get better and better at it. And then it just seems more and more ridiculous. They're like, I just can't quit my job. And you're like, why? Like, no, physically, why? Like, why can't you quit your job? Like, you know what I mean? They start hyperventilating and it's like, could you move in with your parents? Could you move in with a friend? Could you split rent? I mean, I could, but I mean, other people who are going to die in 100 years would think what? And one of my favorite ones is, and I say this all the time to Layla, like whenever we're getting to some sort of like mini complaint, it's like, if you zoom out far enough, you can't see the earth. So we're talking about like, oh man, they're going to mess up this order on this vendor's, blah, blah, blah. I was like, if you zoom out far enough, you can't see the earth. It's just like, it just puts everything immediately into perspective of how ridiculous some of the things that we're concerned about are. It's like the best way to guarantee to not have the life that you want is to do what everyone else is doing. Unless you want what everyone else has, which no one does. So that started basically the 6-month journey from when I decided that I wanted to change my life till when I changed it. And I think that like as you become more able or more potent or higher agency, that timeline between when you decide you want to do something and when you actually do it just continues to compress, right? Like now if I want to change something, I'm like, let's change it, like done. We walk out of a thing, I was like, we're never going to do that podcast again, or I don't want to talk to this person again, or whatever it is, right? Whereas before it's like, okay, I have to sleep on it. I have to really think about it. And like, how am I going to, it's like, why do I care about how I'm going to say it? This is what it is, done. And it's just like, that timeline is compressed, but the hardest one for me, like the first one was by far the hardest. And everyone since then, the nice thing is that no matter how difficult your circumstance is, if you have like the bigger the wall that you have to get through is, as soon as you get past that one big wall, you then can use that wall as the evidence for why you can jump over the next wall, because that will be the biggest one. It then becomes this one huge proof point. So the bigger the dragon is that you have to slay, the more evidence you have that you can slay the next dragon. And I think that is, if there's ever been a good point for why getting over the first hard one is so hard, is that it will then give you the reinforcement that you can do whatever you need to do next. Like whenever I feel anxious or insecure or angry or sad, I'm like, what conversation do I need to have that I'm not having? And so then, and usually if I just think for not that long, I'm like, this is the conversation I've been putting off. And then, I'm not the poster child of mental health. And so I'll just call myself a pansy for not having the conversation. And then I just have it. If everybody who's like at the bottom and feels like they have nothing going for them, reframe that as, I have nothing going for me, which also means that I have nothing to lose by taking action, it makes you a much more dangerous person. And I think that was the flip that I've had repeatedly shown to me in my life that allowed me to take the step that I was afraid to take. If you think back to all the negative situations you had, like the really, really bad ones, when you expand the time horizon, most times they become net wins. And so then it just means that, like, if you're in a really tough time right now, you just got to wait. and then you'll get your reference point back on all the things that changed as a result, because most times when shit is bad, it can't get worse. So then you feel like, well, it can't get worse than this. And then your action threshold decreases and you do all the things you know you should have done anyways. And so it's like we have this big stack of should do's and we just wait until it's 2 miles.
Yep.
And then you're like,
I'm getting in the car.
Like the firing conversation. And you're like, well, I just fired one person, or like I just ended one partnership, I just broke up with one girl, or whatever it is. And you're like, who else do I need to talk to today? Right? Like, and then in like a period, like you have these rapid periods of growth that happen, and then you have the next web of comfort because it's way better than you were before.
Yep.
And I think I wonder, this is more just like an open thought, but like, I wonder how long like more successful people stay in that next plateau. Like, I wonder if their threshold for
action stays low.
Yeah, they're I'm getting comfortable, like how quickly they get comfortable into like, I need to change, I need to get better. I think a lot of times the decisions that we make are predicated on the conversations we need to have, because usually like and what's interesting is like, you can define commitment by eliminating alternatives. So if you're committed, you've eliminated alternative actions. Right? Like you can say I'm committed, but until you eliminate other options, you're not committed.
There's always a get out of jail free card.
Right. And so a lot of people make decisions to end relationships, to quit their job, to start the new thing, but they don't become committed to the decision until they remove the other options. And then you're forced to take action on it. And so I think actually defining those two different things. Now you could define, decision as to kill off, like decidere from Latin, but from a colloquial thing, I think there are two different instances. It's like, I need to change this, and then I do change it. And the making the decision is when it becomes a commitment. I remember this when I was 19 years old. I was super angry, like all 19-year-old men, right? That's the standard default, right? I was angry at both my parents because I was 19, right? And I remember blaming them for everything, blaming them for my life, blaming them for not being a better person. I literally blamed them for being a bad person. And I remember realizing that when I blamed them, that I gave them control over my life. And then the idea that the people that I hated the most at the time were the ones who actually were controlling me was the thing that most sickened me, to then actually flip my narrative to actually taking control. Like, that was the one thought process. Like, my mother, I'm giving her control over my romantic like, my mother controls this? Fuck that. I was like, no. And so like, just the idea that somebody who I was disgusted by at the time had that much power is what gave me the power to start taking action. You can move through life at 7 times the rate of other people by simply changing when you say you're going to make a decision from end of week to end of day. So think about how that stacks up. So it's like, let's say that there were 4 decisions that you needed to make. If the normal person takes a week to make the decision, and then their mind moves on to the next thing that they have anxiety for, and start making that decision and decide another week, decide another week, decide another week. It's a month to make those 4 decisions. Whereas the Superman that takes one decision day 1, second decision day 2, third decision day 3, fourth decision day 4, they aren't even finished the week yet, and they're where the other person is at the end of the month. And like, that speed of decision making, like not paying the attention cost, the opportunity cost of your time, I think that's really profound in terms of how quickly people move through life, in terms of achieving the goals that they set out. Because people are like, how is that guy so young and he's achieved X, Y, and Z? It's like, well, what takes you a month to make a decision, we make it an hour. And then the next hour, I make another decision that takes you a year next month. And so like, that's how you can go 30 times or 100 times faster than the quote average person who's overweight, has $1,000 in their bank account, and is going to die at 70. You don't gain confidence by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by giving yourself a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Outwork your self-doubt. If you regress fear to its most basic form, it's death. And death is the greatest motivator. And like, you can prove it in a simple example. It's like, if I all of a sudden go up to anybody on the street and I put a gun in their head and I say, point a gun at their head and I say, go do this thing, they'll go do it. But if I say, you can have anything you want if you do this, they're willing to go 10 times harder with a gun in their face to not die. And so if you take fear and regress it all the way down to its basest form, like that's what the insecurity is. Like if they think I won't be enough, and if they don't think I won't be enough, then this won't happen. If this won't happen, this won't happen, I'll be alone, and I'll be dead. Right? Like if you just regress it all the way down, like that's all it is. And so like the biggest achievers in life, I think have most directly tied them not doing whatever it is that they want to do to death, whether they're consciously aware of it or not. And then that's what motivates them harder.
If you have resonated with this message, let me congratulate you. You are a worthy member of this community, member of MotivActionX. Welcome. Welcome to the community of competent people. You will always have this refuge to look for that spark of motivation. But remember, discipline eats motivation for breakfast. So, if you liked this video, subscribe to the channel, share, like, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to be updated. Comment if you want to contribute something to your colleagues in the community, and see you in the next video. See you soon, and always stay strong.